Welcome to the Reinventing You Podcast, where we hear empowering stories from others and what they have done to reinvent themselves in life. It's about getting an inside look into what it takes to create the life you desire, not by staying comfortable, but by having the courage to overcome the fears holding you back. Today, our special guest is Bree Zampogna of Melbourne, Australia. She is a mindset and success coach, author, speaker, and former finance professional. Bree has had a diverse background in working with and still in the fitness and physical health industry, as well as in business management and assurance fields. A few fun facts about Bree that make her even more of an amazing guest is she has been dancing since she was 5 years old, and to this day, she still loves taking Broadway jazz dance classes. Another fun fact that as a woman in her 40s, she can still do the splits. Bree, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to have you.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I mean, the splits thing is amazing in itself. I have never been able to do the splits. Never. And I tried. Is that something that just came natural?
Oh, well, it was one of those things I just did, the kind of dancing that I did. I actually used to do something called calisthenics, which is it's not known outside of Australia in terms of its kind of dance form. And it was just something I had to do many, many times a week, was do the split. So it's still my party trick. I'm proud that I can still do it without, tearing a hamstring.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I want to go ahead and dive right in and hear about a Reinventing You story. Please share a story of a time in your life where you had to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, sure. So this probably, I guess the catalyst or the circuit breaker point for me was just over 3 years ago. But if I sort of scoot back a little bit to give a little bit of a backstory, is I always remember going through and coming to my end of high school days and having to make some decisions about going to university. And I remember sitting there and working through, I guess, the guide back then, because nothing was online. It was the 90s, early 90s, in terms of working through and figuring out what was I going to do, what kind of degree did I want to do at university. And I remember sitting there and working through the list of everything that was available and getting to the back of the book and thinking, oh my God, there is absolutely not one thing in here that is speaking to me.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really not sure what I'm going to do. And so I was always envious of people who knew from an early days that this is my purpose and this is what I'm meant to do, because that was not me.
Yeah.
And so how I often describe it though, is at that point then I started my career as an accidental accountant. So I had been doing accounting studies at high school, and debits and credits is a language you can either speak or you cannot. And it was a language I was fluent in. So I thought, well, hey, stick with what you are capable of doing, that you're actually pretty good at. Yeah. Maybe this is for you. So off I went and did a commerce degree at one of the prestigious unis here. So that was all good. And I think to the outside world, I looked like I knew exactly where I was going. Uh-huh. It was like, right, I got into the exact degree that I wanted to do. I then secured a graduate position at one of the prestigious accounting firms, which was then called Pricewaterhouse, and kind of off I went on my career.
Yeah.
And I had to do all this extra study, and that was all fine, and it all got done, and everything was sort of ticking along, and I didn't really know what else to do. Other people knew that wasn't necessarily for them. They'd go out and work in, finance positions in industry. That wasn't for me. And so, for all intents and purposes, I had a really, really successful career in accounting, but I always felt like a square peg in a round hole.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it was never quite for me, even though I was pretty good at it. So I think even till today, I still keep surprising people by the changes that I've made. He's like, I thought you were a numbers girl. And I'm like, yeah, not really. Yes, but no, And so I sort of found myself once, and I guess sort of the first turning point was when the global financial crisis hit us in end of 2008, early 2009.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, put me in a situation where becoming a partner in PricewaterhouseCoopers was no longer an option.
Okay.
Because of what was going on. And I remember being really irritated for 2 days, and then this massive sense of relief flooded through my body, because it was just like, that was not meant for me. Yeah. And it was just something that I had been there for such a long time. It was the next obvious step.
Sure. Okay.
But it wasn't really what I felt like I was meant to be doing. And then I spent like 7 years trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Oh, wow.
And changing jobs and trying different things and learning lots of new skills. And I did some really cool stuff. So again, from the outside looking in, everything looked pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But for me, it was still a bit of a prison.
Okay.
And so prison, it looked really awesome. But when you're growing and you're not really living into your purpose, it's still a prison.
Yeah.
And so then I guess, and that sort of, I guess, just kind of summarizes up to sort of where I was sort of just over 3 years ago. And at that point in time, I was probably at a pretty low point and my health was terrible. So with really high stress job, long hours, feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders often in the roles that I was doing, I sort of broke myself physically. Oh, wow. So I was also now in my 40s, you know, your body just changes, the whole, you know, chemical infrastructure shifts, and I kind of blew that up. So I was also feeling pretty ordinary, as well as just constantly going, is this it? So I felt like, you know, every night in bed, my noisy roommate, you know, that one that just constantly chats to you in your head all the time going, blah, 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 just would keep saying to me, is this it? And all I kept thinking was, if this is what the next however many decades of my life look like, I don't think I can do this. Because work was taking the best of me, but I couldn't describe it as anything more than I don't hate it. Wow. And so it was having an influence on all the rest of the parts of my life as well.
It was like there was like this inner yearning and calling and like voice in your head that even though you didn't hate what you did, something wasn't in alignment.
Yeah.
Driving you somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the perfect word. And I use that word a lot, is alignment, where again, I didn't hate it. I was actually pretty good at what I was doing. It came with fantastic financial benefits, but my energy was sapped. And so we don't get energy, we release energy. And if you're not sort of in alignment and on purpose, that's when often you feel like you have no energy. Yeah. Because you can't get it out of you because you're not actually doing what you want to be doing. And so I was starting to listen and observe that I was constantly going, really, is this it? And during that time, my brother had completely reinvented himself. And I was watching him having so much fun doing what he was doing that I was actually really envious and seeing other people take different directions and backing themselves and having a great time. And I'm like, why can't I do this? And I think also what I was doing is I was expecting this massive lightning bolt to go, this is it. Sure. This is what you need to do. Absolutely. And I think maybe a few of us actually, we think like that when we, you know, we'll instantly know what our purpose is and we'll get this blazing idea that says this is where we need to go.
Absolutely. And then we'll be on this blissful high the entire time. That's like
exactly. Yeah. And then when you can't find it, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Why is this not working? So you've got to actually let that bit go and just trust that when you start to take a step in a direction, everything else will start to unfold. And then where the real circuit breaker came, and I always really have a lot of fun telling this bit because people go, what? My electrician changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
When your electrician, that should be a book. When your electrician changes your life, right?
Well, it's actually the opening line in the chapter that I've written in a book is, you know, about the electrician changing my life. Awesome. So I needed to get in touch with the person who'd done the electrical work at my house a few years earlier. And I had emailed him and got no response. And I just thought that was a bit odd. It wasn't his style. So I had his number. So I thought, oh, I'll call rather than just moving on, you know, to somebody else. Yeah. And when he answered, he said, oh, I'm not an electrician anymore. That's why that email doesn't work. And I'm like, oh, okay. What are you? And he said, oh, about 3 months after I did your house, I became a mindset coach.
Wow.
And I was like, and I was like, how did you go from an electrician to a mindset coach? And I have spent at least 7 years trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Yeah. And you did that 3 months after we last spoke. And you weren't even talking about that. You were talking about making vegan chocolate. So
wow.
like, you know, like it was just so kind of out of left field. And something was telling me, meet with him. So just on the spot, I said, yeah, cool. Okay, you can't help me with what I rang you for, but can you meet me for coffee? Because I'm so unbelievably intrigued by what you've just told me. I just want to know more.
Sure.
And I can still remember sitting in the cafe where we were sitting, what tea I was drinking, what I had on. I can't remember the name of the cafe, but I know where it is.
Wow.
And
okay.
I guess it's one of those when something is a life-defining moment, you start to remember, it becomes quite vivid in your memories.
Yeah.
And look, and he was doing a great job of trying to sell me to work with him as one of his clients, as a coaching client. And I was incredibly resistant because I think I was just so stuck. Everything just seemed like a drag.
Yeah.
It's too hard. I've got to do this. What do you mean I need to spend time reading and learning and doing this and doing that? I don't have time. I've just told you I don't have time. Right? So incredibly resistant. But he said to me, look, what's the worst that could happen? You invest some time and money and everything changes. You know, like that's the best. What's the worst that could happen? You invest some time and money, but you're at least no worse off than where you are today. So in 12 months' time, everything's exactly the same. And I remember I just went, oh my God, if I'm doing this and I'm feeling like this in 12 months' time, can someone put me out of my misery right now?
Right. Yeah.
Because the idea of feeling the way I was, and again, so like I wasn't unhappy. I was just so dissatisfied. Yeah. And so just not, again, like coming back to that word alignment, that I was not where I was meant to be. So when you're like that, you feel like you're grinding up against everything all the time. And everything feels a little bit harder than it needs to be. And so, when I had that bit in the head in my hands and I've just pulled out my credit card and gone, just do the damage. Like whatever needs to happen, just like make it, just take it before I change my mind. But I also remember I was so resistant though. And I actually said to him, I'm going to be your client from hell. Until I'm not, and I'm your favorite one.
That's awesome.
And it's so funny because later on he said to me, oh God, you were tough. I said, I told you, I warned you. Yeah. But then it did shift. And so it was something, I guess that's what it was telling me. And I guess what I've learned since then is, you know, the universe puts what you need in your path. You just have to open your eyes and look at it. Yeah.
And it was being thrown at you and you were like ready for the teacher, but resistant for the teacher. But it was like being placed in front of you and you went for it. And what happened?
Yeah. So within about a month, I walked into work and said, see ya.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I was actually I was in management consulting at the time. Okay. And the project I was doing was coming to a conclusion anyway, within about a month or 6 weeks. And I had forgotten that I was a contractor and therefore in charge of my own destiny because I was not an employee. Okay. And I had reminded myself that I kept saying all the time in my head, or I'd said to other people, I really hope there's no new projects for me to go on to because I'm really tired and I could use a break. Like I want to be on the bench. I'd forgotten that I could actually ask for that. I was just so stuck on like the treadmill, and just going round and round.
Running automatic, yeah.
And I kind of forgotten. I'd taken myself off to a gravity float. And while I was like zooming around in the little pod, just relaxing and kind of chilling out, it dawned on me that, oh, hang on a minute, you're in charge. Like, we're in charge of you. Huh? Like, how is it that you missed that these last few months? And so I'd made the decision then really quickly that it was time, I was going to tap out from work and take some time out. And I wasn't quite sure exactly when I was going to say that. But then something else happened in the work environment that irritated me quite strongly. And I just thought, you know what? My reaction to this is probably overblown, but it's also telling me that I'm so disinterested in what's going on right now. I need to tell them today that I'm done. And so I kind of did a bit of part-time stuff for a while, but it's like I never went back to management consulting. Wow. From that point on. And so I actually just decided then, so I was putting more effort and emphasis then into my own study of myself, which is what I was working with Matt the electrician on. And was, learning. I've kind of could never seen him going from like high vis colors to like wearing his suit, just made no sense. And I was doing the opposite, like get rid of the corporate clothes, throw them away. Like,
yeah, I like that too. I'm pretty low key. Like I don't like too dressy.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I am done with the suits. I'm not restricted anymore. And, just a whole different look.
Yeah.
And so I was at that point then where I was just like, I have no idea where I'm headed and what I'm going to do, but bring it on. Let's figure it out.
How did it feel for you? What was there anxiety? Was there fear? Was it kind of you trusted the process?
Probably all of the above at some point in the way it is, because look, I was in a situation where financially I could take extended periods of time off work and not have to worry. So at least from that perspective, in terms of, that often is a challenge for people and they worry about that sort of thing. So I didn't have to let that be like a handbrake, which was great. And I just thought, you know what, the first thing I need to do though is to get myself back into a healthy place in terms of just how my body was responding and what it needed to do. Yeah. And so that actually became my first major goal in terms of even the self-development work that I was doing, was about fixing my health.
And so, why do you think that was so important for you in that reinvention process?
Well, I think it was because I just felt so blur. Like it just...
And just,
yeah. And I was just not myself. So I guess, and I had some fairly serious gut issues going on that needed to be resolved. And it was showing up on the outside through a lot of inflammation. So I was a lot heavier than I was normally. So my clothes didn't fit, but also just even my joints and my body was really creaky as a result of what was going on. So physically, you're not sort of sick enough not to be doing things, but you're never at your full capacity. Sleep was terrible. Energy levels were low. So I thought, well, actually what I need to do is invest in myself, because I felt like it was consuming a lot of my thought energy every day in terms of how do I feel? What do I look like? What's not going to be quite right today? Just everything was just kind of I just didn't feel like me. Yeah. So I thought I need to start there.
Yeah, which I think is beautiful, because it's like part of reinventing yourself. There's often layers to it. And we think that we just need to focus on this thing, but like you spoke to energy, you spoke to sleep patterns, and just not feeling good within yourself. And how does that affect you in reinventing yourself if you're going to find a new job or whatever, your own purpose? There's that layer that you were trying to heal, and you recognize that was a piece of it. That's amazing.
Yeah, because also too, I was pretty cranky quite regularly. Yeah. Because everything was just sort of getting me down. So I was cranky. Yeah. And so I just thought, it needs to be about me. Not what anybody else thinks or wants or does or whatever. It's just, what do I need? And I also started with the study that I was doing and starting to listen to my thoughts and what was actually coming out of my mouth. I realized I kept saying, and then I broke myself and my body is broken. So I kept saying that.
Talk track on top of it. So you not only were challenged with the sleeping and the behaviors, but your talk track was influencing the results that you were getting. I got you.
Exactly. Because I just thought, well, then how is this amazing machine that is the human body going to do its thing and rebalance itself if I remind it 50,000 times a day that it's broken and that it's letting me down? Yeah.
Wow. So, what a beautiful discovery. That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah. And then people thought I was crazy, because then I did this really full-on restrictive gut health diet. I got tested, so I knew exactly what I had to do. And I started that on the day of my work Christmas party. So I went to the Christmas party and just asked for sparkling water and said no to every other single thing on offer. And all through the Christmas period, when people are indulging and it's summer in Australia, so everyone's out and about in pubs, and I was still there with them, but I was just drinking water.
And was there any obstacles, or how was that? Was your why so strong that you were so driven and determined that it made it that
Yeah.
much easier?
Yeah, it was one of those, I was so attached to the outcome and to achieving the goal that, you know, whenever you're going after any goal, you have to sacrifice something, but you're sacrificing something of lesser value to you than the outcome that you're going after. So having a wine at a Christmas party was so less important to me than shedding the 15 kilos that I'd put on and feeling like myself.
Yeah.
And people said, oh, you know, why don't you wait till after Christmas? And I said, well, I could wait till after Christmas, and then it's Dad's birthday, so there'll be cake. And then it's Mum's birthday, so there'll be cake. Then there's my birthday, so there'll definitely be cake and wine.
There's always a reason, always an excuse to keep playing it out, or you can create the change.
Exactly. And it's like, by the time I would have started, then it would have been March.
Yeah.
But what I was finished by the time March rolled around.
Yeah.
You know, and I had gone on this complete, and I was like a different person. So again, it was also part of that, you end up in that reinvention. So even though I didn't know what direction I was going to take in other areas, I felt like I unzipped the kind of suit that was holding me down. It was really like, you know, carrying a bag of rocks around.
Yeah. And it was
I let it go.
that you could see because you were thinking clear and feeling better and more confident because you just overcame this obstacle. You just peeled back this layer and faced it. And now more opportunities presenting itself that you are open to receiving and exploring.
Yeah. And so then at that time, my brother had gone out in his own business. And I remember him, well, it was even earlier than that. It was probably a few months earlier. And we went for dinner for his birthday. And he'd asked me to listen to something beforehand. And then I realized he was kind of setting me up because he was just like, well, you keep talking about wanting to do something in the health and wellness industry. Why don't you put your money where your mouth is and help me out? I need some help with some stuff. So maybe dabble in that. Yeah. So I'm like, okay. So that's where I started helping his, you know, out in his personal training business. So I don't train people, but I just run the, you know, get everything happening behind the scenes. And, you know, I've given them sales training and whatever else. And while I was just still figuring out, you know, I always just keep saying, I just still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. You know, it just kind of keeps happening. And then a friend of mine mentioned that she was doing this styling course. And I had been working with a personal stylist and dabbling in this for about 10 years.
Like so for hair or for clothes or for what? What do you like?
For clothes, like styling people.
Clothes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I thought, I've been looking for a course of these to do for a long time, but couldn't find a place that felt right.
Yeah.
And then she discovered one that was just up the road from where we live. And I'm like, fantastic. So I signed up and did a Masters of Professional Styling. So, you know, I've styled photo shoots and stuff that I was so far out of my comfort zone, I couldn't even see it.
That's cool.
Like, I didn't even want to do that part of the course. But for the bigger thing that I was doing, I had to do that piece and I didn't want to. But you know, when you just feel so awesome when you've done something afterwards that was making you so uncomfortable. So like the photos from that photo shoot, I like show everyone going, check this out. Look what I did. You know, the 3 accountants working together, styling this awesome photo shoot in my extended Italian family's local coffee shop. Like it was so cool. And that just, it's those types of things that I keep remembering, that when, you know, good stuff lives on the other side of uncomfortable, because that's growing, you know, and it's just that you need to know that when you're feeling uncomfortable that you keep going, because all the good stuff's going to land on the other side of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's those little moments that I kind of remember. And, you know, after 2-3 days of really intense stuff in this course, and then feeling like I could run a marathon at the end of that, because that's the release of the energy when you've just done something really cool.
Yeah.
So I was doing all this stuff and I still didn't know. And then the electrician rang again.
Were you still coaching with him or had the time passed?
No, not so much. Not by then, it sort of had petered off. And because he'd taken a different direction as well. So he was no longer working directly in that space either. But so then he rings me. A phone call from Matt usually comes with something. You know, it's not just, hi, how you going?
Yeah.
And so he's like, you know, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. He said, for me to work and start working as a mindset coach, he said, I had to completely reinvent myself because it was so far away from an electrician. He said, you've kind of been this person your whole career. So what are you doing? and he kind of like just pushed me off the cliff.
Uh-huh.
So again, I handed the credit card again for a much, much bigger number this time.
Uh-huh. But you knew the value in it. You understood what it does and how it creates that transformation, how it creates that accountability and that system that gets you on that track that helps you propel you faster. I got you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, I was also recognizing in myself that I probably wasn't going to get there on my own in terms of getting comfortable enough to make that kind of decision.
Sure.
That I was almost like waiting for someone to say, this is what you need to do. Because in the absence of figuring it out myself, because a lightning bolt hadn't hit, it was sort of
do you think that's fear? I'm sorry. Do you think that's fear and self-doubt? And what do you think it is that was fueling that piece of you that felt like you needed someone to tell you, to guide you, to support you more?
Yeah, I think there's probably two things. So I think one, I think was I'd spent so long I often describe it as I felt like I was on a bullet train that was just going 100 miles an hour and I couldn't even pull into the stations, even though I knew that's where good stuff was. So it's almost like I had forgotten or lost touch with how to really listen to myself as to what do I want. Okay. And to even think about what I wanted and to identify and feel with it. So I think there's a piece of just being a little bit bland or lost in that space. But I also think everything comes down to fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could feel really big or the fear could be really little. But everything comes down to fear in some ways. And we spend so much time in our own thoughts about different things that we think all these other people are thinking things about us. But we need to remember that they're spending as much time thinking about themselves.
Right. Yeah.
We are thinking about ourselves. I don't have time to think about everybody else. Yeah. Because I'm too busy talking to myself.
Right. Yeah.
About stuff. So I think it always comes down to fear because, you know, one of the great quotes out there, you know, I think Steve Jobs kind of says it in a particular way as well. It's like we can't measure what we're getting, you know, and you can't connect the dots going forward. Sure. You can only look at that on, you know, in the reverse. So what I'm noticing even in like COVID times is this. It's like life might not be magnificent, but the minute it starts to change, because we can't see what the next version's going to look like, we cling for dear life to what we had before. Yeah. Even if we might have hated it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's measurable and it is known.
Yes.
And
scary. Yeah.
And because we can't see what the rest is, we assume it's going to be worse. Yeah. Because we are naturally inclined to see change as danger because that's our 2 million-year-old brain.
Absolutely.
Going, is that my food or am I it's food? Yeah. You know, and it's in that really primal kind of push-pull response. Absolutely. So, as the minute something feels unknown, it can feel really, really scary. But then it's learning to trust that that's the cool bit. And so if your goal doesn't, you know, excite you and terrify you in equal parts, then it's probably not worthy of you. Yeah. You know, because you're not going to do kind of whatever it takes to make it happen. But I do remember after I signed up to work, you know, alongside the Proctor Gallagher Institute and, you know, be a mindset coach and, you know, and just do all the other things I'm doing. I created a new email folder in my inbox and put every email that came in that folder and pretended like it hadn't happened.
We'll just push it aside. It never happened. I'm just going to blind. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like the terror barrier had just come up and slammed me in the face.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was probably 6 or 7 weeks that I was just like, I virtually told nobody about the step I'd taken, which was also part of it because it's, for me anyway, not right. Like the world didn't need to know straight away. And I was also, I guess, just overwhelmed by all of a sudden all these stuff's coming to me and do this, do that, and rah. And I'm like, what have I done? Because also too, because it was something I hadn't really planned for. By this point, I was deep in the thick of my styling masters. I had taken a part-time job and then I added this in. So I'd gone from having this time off and finding myself to just jamming it all in. And I was just
How
like,
did you find organization in that? So as you're reinventing yourself, you have all these opportunities, you're exploring, you're applying, you're facing your fears, you're building your confidence, and then you realize, holy, I got a whole bunch in front of me now. They're all great. How did you kind of compartmentalize and organize them to move forward?
Yeah, I think part of that, and it actually kind of sent me into a tailspin for a while because I was really trying to figure out where they all fit.
Sure.
And what I had to do was to step back from it a little bit and go, what do I want? So the part-time job I'd taken, the particular company I was working with, they'd been wanting me to work with them for 5 years. And I finally said yes, because it suited what I needed at that time. So I was feeling a little bit, guilty / loyal about wanting to maybe move on faster than they had hoped I would. But I had to sort of sit back and go, well, what's my plan here and where does it fit?
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah.
And then I was in this really big kind of conflict of, I've just done all this styling stuff and I've learnt this styling and it's kind of fun. And where does that fit with the mindset stuff I'm doing now? And I was almost trying to treat them equally. And so what I was doing was nothing on either of them, because I was now like, I've got to do this on Instagram and I've got to do this and I've got to do this. And I was just, again, like the overwhelm was out of control.
Sure.
And then I sat back down and I thought, you know what? The styling is a hobby. I did that for fun. It's been something I've been interested in for 10 or 15 years. Styling people and running around shopping centers, buying clothes for them is really, really hard work. It's tiring. And for me, it's not that much fun.
Yeah.
Doing stuff for people with friends and a few people here and there where they ask for help, that's fun.
Yeah.
Going to earn a living from it is not fun.
Yeah. So you're getting clarity on what feels really right for you. So you have these opportunities, you have these things laid out in front of you and say, now it's check-in time. Yeah. Does this feel right? I brought these opportunities to me. I applied myself. I've got these. I'm a little overwhelmed. What feels right to me? And then you're kind of going to eliminate some things and focus on other places.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I first made that decision that said the styling piece, I did that course for me. And there was also lots of things I learned in it that is transferable. It doesn't have to be about styling. And yes, I learned to style a photo shoot, but I didn't even want to do it in the first place. The likelihood of me ever doing it again is like nil. It's not something that I look for and seek out. But I also learnt to, build a workshop out and talk comfortably with no notes and all that sort of stuff. So these are transferable skills. So when I thought about that, it's like one of the rocks, came out of the backpack.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, I've got this part-time job, which is deliberately part-time to balance building up a business, and where am I going with this stuff? And then as time went on, and so I started doing a few clients and mindset, clients and whatever else, and starting to kind of, move in that direction. But then as time went on, the part-time job was sending me back into the place that I'd left 12 months earlier, where it was like the hours were going up and the stress, and I was being involved in projects that I didn't want to be involved in. And I had always said I would probably only last 12 months in that role. And I pulled the pin 3 months earlier.
Wow.
So as I was coming into the Christmas break, so we had like a 2-week Christmas, holiday. And all of a sudden this idea popped into my head that I think I need to resign now, not to wait for another 3 months. And so I was going to visit a friend in Malaysia. I left on Christmas night and I was spending time with her for a couple of weeks. And I just let that idea sit that I wanted to resign. And it's all I kept thinking about while I was away.
Yeah.
So when I came back, the very first, call I made on my first day back at work was to my boss to say, we're done.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And so he was like, well, can you just hang around to finish these projects? And I'm like, no, they're the exact reason I'm leaving.
Wow. Good for you.
I do not want to do those projects.
Yeah.
And none of you have listened to me. So I'm done.
Wow.
So I think that's where I started.
Now you're diving full force into your mindset coaching business. Is that what it is?
Absolutely. So it's been probably over 12 months that's been my, only, focused from a work perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I think it's, you know, it's one of those where I'm noticing the growth and the journey I'm going through.
Yeah.
Because I'm now doing something the coaching bit and working with people, that bit I have no problem with. I've been doing that my whole life, my working life in coaching people. And I used to teach dancing and, you know, I've sort of been in that space, but putting my own business together. And again, from a sort of a technical perspective, kind of know some of that stuff. I've worked in business.
Yeah.
But it's because now it's me. There's no one else. It's just me.
Yeah.
So you do sort of find you hit that fear kind of all the time. Oh, yeah. I've got to post on Facebook now. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
You don't want to listen to me. Oh, yeah. I'm going to do a Facebook. Like, so every like little thing, there's all these little fear spots all the time.
Yeah.
And you just got to just keep kind of pushing yourself off the cliff every single time and knowing it'll be okay.
Yeah. And so the Reinventing You process isn't about suddenly like, oh, I'm at the end of the rainbow and everything's perfect. It's about this continuous journey of recognizing what feels right for you, what doesn't, evolving in that process. And not to say that being a mindset coach will be your forever thing, but it is to say that that is fulfilling. It is empowering. It is educating. You're growing your mind and your soul, and it feels really, really good. So that about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just that thing of just going, something's different all the time, you know, and there's times like, you know, I feel like the lobster who's, you know, shell's got too tight and trying to figure out, you know, how I've got to, you know, rebirth, you know, and grow a new shell. Yeah. And so you hit all those kind of points all the time, but you sort of know now that those points of discomfort is because good stuff's happening. Like that it is growth and it's good stuff. It's not like, I think a lot of people feel the discomfort and go, I'm doing something wrong. I better stop.
Yeah, right. And there's two layers to it, but I think it's beginning to apply yourself and recognizing that this discomfort, it can have two sensations. It can be a no, like I'm in danger mode. That's the fear mode. Or it can be this talk track or this sensation in my body that it's just a false alarm that I need to push myself through and keep moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so that's kind of
journey. What
I am now. Yeah,
that is so awesome. I did want to ask you, because you have such a great background in finance, and you weren't in a position financially where it was burdensome for you to make this reinventing yourself process, and that's transition.
Yeah.
And being COVID right now, what would you recommend for someone who recognizes they want to reinvent themselves, but that from a financial perspective, it's pretty scary?
Yeah, look, I think ultimately though, there's a little bit of trust that you've got to have in the process and trusting yourself as part of that process. So I have a client that's working with me and she is not, she doesn't have lots of cash to spare every month, but she so desperately wanted to change and invest in herself. She figured it out.
Yeah.
Because also working with me is not, you know, this is a more elite kind of package. It's more expensive. It's not like $150 kind of course online. If you do it or you don't, you kind of don't care.
Yeah.
But it's a big investment and I work with people for 6 months.
Yeah.
But when you want it bad enough, you will figure it out.
Yeah.
And I guess, and also part of what, you know, in this particular client, what she's doing is she's figured it out. But she's also trusting that the invention and reinvention she's doing of herself will sort that out.
Yeah.
So now there's a difference between somebody can't pay their bills.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to take money from people who cannot pay their bills.
Right. Yeah.
But for most of us, we're going to spend that money anyway. And maybe we're just spending it on something that's of less importance to us.
Sure. And
wanting to actually invest in ourselves. And like all the great kind of thought leaders and businessmen out there, businessmen, businesswomen, people, whatever, will say the biggest return on investment you will ever have is in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because you take those, like, that's priceless. You just carry them with you continuously. There's no end to that skill development. Just like when you did that photography, you know, fashion thing, the skill development that you gained, you carry with you. And even though it was scary and uncomfortable and there was benefit to it and you invested in it and you grew yourself. And I can definitely think of, you know, people who are struggling and maybe it's just about, changing their diet and shifting that way and getting into a nutrition program, but finding that there's really no limitation to what's available. I mean, between online and even with these locations closed, there's apps, there's programs online that are, an introductory process that gets you moving forward based on your current financial point. And then you can take those bigger leaps when things begin to shift and you begin to see those changes.
Yeah. But I also think too, like, you've got to make a decision.
Yeah.
And you've got to make a decision that you're committed to, because if you're just interested, you'll sort of do what's convenient.
Right.
Oh, I still want my 10, espresso coffees that cost me $50 a week.
I know, right? Yeah.
You're
not hungry enough. It's that it's not there. You're not paying enough attention because it's not there. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. But if you're really committed, like I was with the health goal at the particular time, is nothing was going to get in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. Like, one thing that I do not deter from is at least 5 to 6 days a week, I give myself 30 minutes to work out. Like, there's nothing in my schedule that will prohibit. If that means I wake up at 5 and have to go to an earlier class, or if that means I work out at 7 p.m., or if I just go for a walk, there is something for me that is just, there's no negotiables. And I think that them finding that for wherever they're trying to reinvent themselves, there has to be a non-negotiable, and they've got to be willing to do the work. Yeah,
exactly. It's like during COVID, my thing has been, I started learning languages and I haven't missed a day, 117 days.
Well, so what language are you learning?
Italian, Spanish, and Japanese.
Holy guacamole. Wow.
Started off as Italian and then I just kept adding.
Like, yeah, why one when I can learn 3 or 10 at a time? That's awesome. I love it. What drives
it easier to do more at the same time?
Wow, that's so cool. Can you tell me can you like say, it was have a nice day in like all 3 of them?
Oh God, no. Almost like in none of them. I like, don't know what the app's
Not yet. It's okay. No pressure. That's funny. Oh, I love it. Well, I thank you so much for your time. I know we've gone over, but I did want to ask one final question to wrap things up, if you don't mind. But what is one word you would use to inspire others trying to reinvent themselves, and why that word?
Ooh, that's a good question. The word I guess that's just popped into my head is joy. And the reason I say that is that when you are reinventing yourself and finding yourself, there is so much more joy in your life, in yourself, in everything that you do.
Yeah.
Because you're finding you.
Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Bree.
It's been my absolute pleasure.